Welcome to everybody again. A special welcome to the judges in attendance, Judge Gallen, Judge Wallace, Judge Nicholas, and Judge Ferentz. Thank you for being with us here today. We have a number of announcements today. As always, we like to thank our annual sponsors, Fidelity Bank, LexisNexis, and Firkins Automotive. A special sponsor of ours, Fidelity Bank. We have three representatives here today, Michael Castro, Joanne Baker, and Jeff Wood, and I'd like the three of you to stand briefly. Thank you so much for being part of our association. We appreciate everything that you do, and Jeff Wooden is going to speak with us for a brief moment. Come on up, Jeff.
Sorry about that, bad knee. Thank you very much for having us here today, and obviously Fidelity Bank's ecstatic that we've been able to be a sponsor for the Manatee County Bar Luncheons. My name is Jeffrey Wooden. I'm a Senior Vice President with Fidelity Bank, and we're a small little community bank out of Atlanta, Georgia, about $5 billion in outstandings. I run all of commercial banking for the state of Florida, so I handle anything that has to do with commercial lending, real estate lending, C&I lending. We've only been in this market for 2 years as commercial lenders, and we started this 2 years ago. And in that 2 years, we've closed over $44 million worth of loans in this community, and that includes also Orlando. But the majority of it's been here. There's been a kind of a sense of the community bank feel kind of coming back into this community again, and we're very excited about it. We've closed just in the last 4 months over $17 million worth of transactions here locally in Manatee County. And we're getting ready to issue a commitment of terms on a $20.5 million facility here in Lakewood Ranch within the next week. So we're very excited. We're busy. We want to remain busy. I have my cards over there. If you'd like to stop and see me after the presentation, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you. And if you're interested, and you are a real estate attorney, if you would like to get on our approved attorney list, I'll be more than happy to discuss that with you as well. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. As we serve the luncheon today, we have a number of announcements and business to discuss, a number of events that we have scheduled on our calendar over the next several months. The first that I'd like to draw everyone's attention to is the Manatee County Bar Association Night with the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's a fun event. Terry Cromley, I want to thank. She always helps put that on for us. It's on Thursday, March 22. It's a night game. I think it's one of maybe the only night game they have over there at the stadium. March 22, 2018. I think you'll see flyers on your table discussing that evening. It's always a whole lot of fun, and we'll mention that again in our inter alia in our weekly e-blast. So we have a new event. It's called the Manatee County Bar Association Scavenger Hunt. As many of you know, we've typically done a community service project every year, and this is our event for this year, and there's a beneficiary to this fun event, and Jennifer Fowler-Hermes is going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, on each of your tables there is a blue flyer that talks about the event. We're trying to do something fun and different to benefit the Veterans Court here in Manatee County. Our event is scheduled to take place on March 16. Teams will be 3 to 5 people. You can either register as a team or you can register as an individual, and we will try to find you other individuals to participate. It's going to start at the gazebo in front of the courthouse, and you'll proceed from there. We've been working on the scavenger hunt list. I actually have enlisted my husband because I'm not walking very well right now, so he's been running around downtown Bradenton putting lists together for me. But we hope you come and join us and be a part of it. And one of the things that you can start thinking about now to get points, if you are going to participate, is to come up with an interesting team name and maybe even a team costume. So it's going to be a fun event. At the end, we'll have a little party. I think we're scheduled to be at Caddy's, and there'll be more information coming. But do take this back. Encourage individuals at your firms to participate, spouses as well. We're going to, keep it clean. So if you have not young kids, but if you have children and don't have anyone to watch them, bring them along. We'll probably have a question or two that they might be able to help you with. All right.
Thank you.
I broke my ankle.
Thank you, Jennifer. I hope you're back on 2 feet soon. Next is Lori Dorman. Lori, if you'd come on up and give us an update on the Diversity Committee.
Hi. On your table, there's a flyer like this. It's called Strong Voices, Strong Subjects. And I am so excited that the Boxer Diversity Initiative is putting on another project. They did a project earlier this year for us. Project 180 seeks to reintegrate people who have done their time back into society, making these people wonderful contributing members of society again. There are 3 different events. The first one is March 2nd, and it talks about parental incarceration. And Tracy Pratt, who is sitting there, Tracy, wave your hand. Tracy Pratt can give you all more information, but the first event, again, is on March 2nd. It's a lunchtime event, and I hope you'll attend. The Diversity Committee is planning things for later on this year, and we'll keep you posted. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Next, if Bryony Swift would come up. She's our Young Lawyers Division President. She's going to update us through the Young Lawyers Hot Minute. Thanks, Bryony.
Good afternoon, everyone. January is always a busy month for the Young Lawyers Division as the state of Florida puts on its affiliate outreach conference in January. Melissa Casanova and myself represented the Young Lawyers Division at the conference this year, where we presented a grant proposal to fund a lactation room for our courthouse to make it more inclusive for working mothers. We proposed to decorate the room with inspiring life stories of women who have broken glass ceilings here in Manatee County. And we're really excited about that project. Also at the AOC, we were honored to receive the Public Service of the Year award for our last year's grant project, which was for Take Stock in Children. Thank you. Concerning our upcoming events, next month we'll be rotating the student art that's presented on the 5th floor of the courthouse, so stop by and take a look. And on March 1st, we'll have our next Java with the judges at 7:30 in the morning on the 9th floor of the courthouse, so please come out and have breakfast with the judges and their judicial assistants. Thank you.
A few more announcements of upcoming events. Save the date, please, for the Bench and Bar Conference. It's May 4, 2018. I understand, talking to Judge Williams, that most of the judges, I think, have cleared their calendar for this day, so you shouldn't have too many court events or trials and things on May 4, as far as I understand. The Bench Bar Conference is something that we're doing cooperatively with Sarasota County Bar Association, and there's really been a tremendous cooperative effort in terms of ideas and work that both bars have put into this. It's going to be a fantastic event. There's topics that sort of cover so many different areas of law, everything from real estate issues to family law issues. We're going to have breakout sessions, civil criminal trial issues that are relevant and current. And we're going to be offering some of the technology and ethics credits that are so valuable. So it's in Sarasota. There are a limited number of seats, and I think there's going to be a real push. It's going to sell out. So we really want to represent the Manatee County Bar Association. Look for the information that you'll need to sign up for that really fun Bench and Bar Conference. It's an all-day event on May 4 this year. We have coming up the Past President's Luncheon on Tuesday, March 6th at noon. Past presidents will be getting an invitation shortly. That's something we started last year. It was a lot of fun. It's really meant primarily to honor past presidents of the bar, but it's also a way for past presidents to provide input and thoughts and their experience as to what we're doing with the bar now and in future years. Speaking of past presidents, we have one in our midst. His name is Cliff Walters. We'd like to recognize Cliff today. He is going to be honored this evening by the Manatee County Chamber of Commerce with an inaugural award. It's the Robert P. Bartz Award for Outstanding Leadership. The press release includes the following: that Cliff Walters is described by friends and colleagues as a leader, role model, mentor, true professional, and compassionate family man. Cliff is a past chairman of the Manatee Chamber and past trustee member of the Manatee Chamber Foundation. He is a principal partner with the Blaylock Walters law firm. His leadership in Manatee County has profoundly influenced public policy, nonprofits, businesses, and philanthropy. And I think we can throw into that this bar association. That's how we know Cliff, and we just want to recognize the importance of that inaugural award and congratulate you today. Two other important events coming up. One involves the investiture of the Honorable Renee Inman, a special event for a very special person. That is to take place on February 9 at 4 p.m. in the historical courtroom over at the courthouse. So we hope that that event, which is, of course, planned at 4 p.m. so that hopefully as many attorneys as possible can attend Renee Inman's investiture on that date. Next, we have the Judge Gilbert Smith Sr., and welcome Judge Smith Jr., the jury assembly room dedication in honor of Judge Smith Sr. That is going to take place on February 16 at 3 p.m. On the second floor of the courthouse, and that is a very, very special event. We hope as many of you who can attend will be there for that as well. Okay. That's the end of our announcements. Are there any other announcements that anyone would like to make for any reason whatsoever? Okay. Alex St. Paul is our president-elect, and she has the honor of introducing our speaker today, Congressman Dan Miller. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks. I prepared notes, but it took too long, so I thought I better not do that. You'll never get to hear Dan speak while I talk about how great he is. Anyway, Dan was our congressman for 10 years. He said that he was going to term limit himself, which he did. And one of my fondest memories is having dinner with Dan and Glenda and my husband Dave. They went to high school together and graduated from Manatee High School together, so they've been friends forever. And we were having dinner one New Year's Eve at our home, and Congressman Clay Shaw and his wife Emily were joining us for dinner. And Clay said, "You've got to talk Dan into staying. You've got to," because he was doing such a great job. Everybody loved him. And he was just a superb congressman. And we said, that's not going to work. You can't talk Dan into anything. And Dan gave his word, and he's going to quit after 10 years, which he did. And Dan said, I had a life before Congress. He was a really good businessman. He was an entrepreneur. He owned this place, owned the marina. He owned a lot of buildings downtown. He owned a fish farm. Anyway, so he said, I had a life before Congress. I'll have a life after Congress, which he does. He lectures all over the world. He's always willing to give his advice and help to people. He has so much integrity and intelligence, and he's just a great friend. So I welcome you, Dan.
Wow, Alex, that's a very nice introduction. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. If this would have happened 20 years ago, I would have known everybody in the room. And it's kind of interesting to be here. And I think all the judges. I don't know why I know the judges here today, but it is a pleasure to be here. You know, it's always a pleasure to speak here in Manatee County with friends, because I'm the only one to ever go to Washington to Congress who came from Manatee County. I graduated from Manatee High School. I wasn't born here, but I graduated from Manatee High School, which gave me some credentials for staying and being part of this community. So it's always special to be here to do something. What I want to talk about today is the dysfunction in Congress and the extreme polarization that's taking place up there and the partisanship that exists. And I'll talk about how difficult it is to govern under those circumstances, and I'll conclude with some comments about the 2018 election. Before I get started, how many people looked at the State of the Union speech, or at least part of it, last night? Well, good. You know, I went to all of them when I was there, and it made me think of one thing, a story about it. Last night, you could see Donald Trump, how he read the teleprompter. Well, Bill Clinton was giving a speech, and he come down the aisle, and he goes up and stands in front of the podium, and he's got the two teleprompters on each side of him. And he's standing there, and then all of a sudden he turns around to Al Gore, the vice president, says something, and who signals for George Stephanopoulos, who was an aide at the White House at the time, to come over. And then all of a sudden Stephanopoulos turns and runs out of the building, which was a strange sight, and we're all standing there applauding, and Clinton starts giving a speech, and it was not going very smooth. He's a very smooth talker, very smooth person too. But it just wasn't going well. It turned out the teleprompter had the wrong speech on it for the first 6.5 minutes. That's a true story. And so he luckily had rehearsed it so well, and he was so smooth he could do that. If Donald Trump didn't have that teleprompter going for 6.5 minutes, I'm not sure what would have happened. You know, this extreme polarization and partisanship is really bad up there. I was there 2 weeks ago today taking my granddaughter's class around the Capitol, and it was the day before the vote on the CR, the continuing resolution in the House. It was very tense up there. I was talking to Democrats and staffers and such. And so I'm so glad I'm not there. I'm so glad I term limited myself. You know, people ask if I miss it. Yeah, I miss it. Wow, it was a great experience to have 10 years of your life to be able to be in Washington and be in the center part of our government now. But I sure don't want to be there now. It's really gotten out of hand, I think. We have a partisan, polarized Congress because the electorate is polarized and partisan. The electorate are the people that vote the people in and send them there. So people blame Congress. It's the people that elect them. And let me go through why that's the case and why that's the challenge. It's a geography issue. Republicans like to live around other Republicans, and Democrats like to live around other Democrats. That's true. I'm not a sociologist to explain that. But if you look at a map of the United States, and you look at all the counties and how they voted, and you have red for the Republicans and blue for the Democrats. Hillary Clinton won not quite 500 counties in the nation. Donald Trump won 2,600 counties. The country looks red. The Democrats are heavily concentrated in the urban centers along the coast of California, Washington, Oregon, from Delaware up to New England. But the rest of the country is quite red. And just, I wish I could do a PowerPoint here because it's easier to do it that way, but it's not always easy to do it at lunch, I don't think. But at any rate, think of the state of Florida we're all familiar with. We have 67 counties in the state of Florida. Hillary Clinton won 9 of them. Donald Trump won 58 counties. Hillary Clinton got 47% of the vote. Trump got 49% of the vote. The Democrats are concentrated in certain areas. Tallahassee, there's 2 counties up there. Tampa, the Orlando area. And by the way, the Orlando area is where the Puerto Rican population is very strong, by the way. You know about all the Puerto Ricans. They're mainly moving to the Orlando area. But the main Democratic population is down in the Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. It's heavily concentrated in that area. And Republicans are scattered around the state. Down in that Fort Lauderdale area, Broward County, over 2 million people, voted 66% for Hillary Clinton. Go straight across Alligator Alley and you get to Naples, Collier County, I think it was like 60-some% for Donald Trump. You go to the Panhandle of Florida, that area, there are 2 congressional districts in the Panhandle of Florida. You can't gerrymander the Panhandle of Florida because you got Alabama on the north, Gulf of Mexico, and they voted 66% in those 2 congressional districts for Donald Trump. You go down that, I say that Fort Lauderdale area, they voted 60-some%. That area elects very liberal members. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is one of the more famous members of Congress from that part of the state. And so Democrats like to live around Democrats. Republicans like to live around Republicans. This county has voted 57% for Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton just got 40% of the vote in this county. Sarasota is a little different. The northern part of the county votes different from the southern part of the county, but it still voted 53% for Donald Trump. The thing is, Republicans like to live around Republicans, and so you can't gerrymander the districts that much. People blame gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is part of the problem, but not much. Here in Florida, 10 years ago, we passed a constitutional amendment that said you can't gerrymander. And so the congressional districts we have today were drawn by the state Supreme Court. But how do you gerrymander the panhandle of Florida, or you gerrymander that southeast Florida where you got the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the Everglades on the other side? The challenge you have is the people that get elected, they get elected in primaries. The vast majority of members of Congress are elected in primaries rather than the general election. That's true here locally. I don't think there's, here in Manatee County, I think the only Democrat by party elected is Charles Smith. There may be a state representative out of St. Pete, the district comes in. There are Democrats elected, but they're in nonpartisan races, such as school board or the city council races. But the county commission, the state legislative delegation is all Republican. Sarasota is the same way. I don't think there's a single person in Sarasota County with a D after their name that's elected in a partisan race. Primaries are races where races are decided. 40 years ago, it was always in the Democratic primary. Judge Galley, remember, Republicans didn't have much voice back 40, 50 years ago. But it's different. So what happens in these districts, the most conservative people vote, and they send the most conservative people to Congress. The same way in the liberal districts. The most liberal districts send the most liberal members there. And what you have now is, how do you govern under a situation like that? There are very few moderates, if you want to call them moderates, left in Congress. The moderates have all been wiped out. What's happened is that we've had these wave elections, and we may have one this November, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we've had 3 wave elections in the past 25 years. We had one in 1994, 2 years after Bill Clinton came in, and I was there. And people were mad at Bill Clinton, the gun vote and assault weapons ban, the trade issue and spending bills. And so Republicans were energized, turned out, and came out and voted against the Democrats. Republicans took control of the House and the Senate. Fast forward 12 years, in 2006, it was 2 years after Bush was reelected. People were mad as hell at Bush. Iraq war, the Hurricane Katrina. And so people came out and voted against anybody that was a Republican. And the Democrats took control of the House and the Senate in 2006. I knew a lot of the people that lost that year. Clay Shaw, you mentioned. Nothing wrong with what Clay did. He just represented Fort Lauderdale and had an R after his name. There were Chris Shays and Nancy Johnson from Connecticut. Good moderate Republicans, they had R after their name and lost. Jim Leach in Iowa. A lot of members lost, good people, but they were just the wrong party that year. Fast forward 4 years, 2 years after Obama was elected, and it was another Republican wave. Republicans picked up 63 House seats in the 2010 election. They didn't get control of the Senate that year, but in a couple of elections later they did, because mainly they nominated some loser candidates that year. I'll get into that in a minute. The problem is, how do you govern now with this partisan divide? And that's a real challenge. It's more parliamentary-like, I think, because you govern with one party. And so, because there's no moderates to turn to. There are 240 Republicans in the House right now, and you need 218 votes to pass something. How do you get 218 votes out of 240? There's a group called the Freedom Caucus. Real conservative Republicans. They're libertarians. A lot of them came out of the Tea Party wave election in 2010, and they kind of stick together. And if they say they don't like something, it doesn't happen. So you have 205 Republicans want to do one thing, and these 30, 35 don't want to do it. You can't go to the moderate Democrats. We used to have a group called the Blue Dogs. They don't exist anymore. And so the challenge is, how do you get all the 218 votes to get something to pass? It's a challenge. We're facing another shutdown next week. The CR that's going right now, the continuing resolution, expires on February 8th. And right now the indications are the Freedom Caucus is going to oppose it. How do you govern when a small group within the Republican Party tells the rest of them what to do? And the fact is, the minority party, which is a challenge, the goal of the minority in Congress is to become the majority. I was there for 2 years in 93 and 94 in the minority, and you're irrelevant. I used to say you vote no, go home and complain, because you're nothing much to do in the minority. There's a Rules Committee in the House, got 9 Republicans on it and 4 Democrats right now. They decide what comes up, they decide how many minutes of debate, what issues are being discussed. It's totally controlled by the Republicans. And when the Democrats take over, it'll have 9 Democrats and 4 Republicans on it. So it's a mess up there because of this and the irrelevance of the minority. Let me talk briefly about, and we'll save time for questions, the 2018 election. It could be a wave, and right now the indication is it probably will be a wave. For the Democrats to take control of the Senate, it's 51-49. They need 2 seats because the vice president breaks the tie votes. It probably is not going to happen right now. The indications are, I think most analysts don't think the Democrats can take control of the Senate to pick up 2 seats. Because the arithmetic issue is there are 25 Democratic Senate seats up this year and only 9 Republican seats. So they have to win all 25 of the Democratic held seats, plus pick up 2 from the Republicans. But most of these Senate seats are safe seats. And there's only 2 Republican seats in play right now, and the one in Nevada and one in Arizona. On the Democratic side, those 25 seats, 10 of those Democratic senators are in states won by Donald Trump. And in fact, 5 of the states are in states, 5 of those Democrats are in states overwhelmingly won by Donald Trump, like West Virginia, North Dakota, Missouri, Indiana. And so it's going to be really hard for them to keep all 25 seats and pick up 2. In the House, it was unlikely Democrats could do that, but in a wave election, a lot more vulnerable people could come forward and lose. Historically, the party out of power is the one that's most motivated. 2 years after Clinton got elected, wave election. 2 years after Obama got elected, a wave election. 2 years after Bush first got elected was the only exception, and that was because of 9/11. But 4 years later, the 2006 election was a wave. So history kind of says the Democrats are going to do well in the election. The polls continue to show that. The generic ballot issue and the presidential approval rating being so low is not good for the Democrats. I think a lot of Republicans are retiring. They see a wave, and if they're in a marginal seat, they say, now's the time to retire. Rodney Frelinghuysen, who was a friend of mine from New Jersey, just announced Monday he's retiring. It's a seat that Donald Trump won by 1 point. That's the type of race that would easily go to the Democrats this time around. So the open seats really favor the Democrats. The Democrats are doing a great job recruiting candidates this time around. Democrats are motivated. I read in the paper that Vern Buchanan has a fairly strong an attorney from Siesta Key running against him this time around, who's already raised $250,000. Well, this is a district that Hillary Clinton only got 43% of the vote. Vern's got over $2 million in the bank, so it's a challenge to go after Vern, but people are being motivated. The Democrats have to watch out for the problem is they have so many people running, they get people nominated who are too liberal for the district. That's what happened to Republicans in 2010. We had a chance to pick up 5 Senate seats that year for Republicans, but we ended up letting the Tea Party people get nominated. Remember, there was in Delaware, we should have won that seat, and Mike Castle should have won it, and some lady beat him, and she had to run an ad that she wasn't a witch. I am not a witch. She was extreme. In Missouri, we should have, Claire McCaskill was up there, and we had a good chance to win that seat, but this really extreme right-wing person, he's the one that said it's only involved with legitimate rape issues. Remember that? What's a legitimate rape? How do you nominate people like that? The Democrats have the potential of getting people too far to the left, like Republicans have had sometimes getting people too far to the right. And so, it'll be interesting to see if that happens in any of these elections, because there's so many Democrats out there running. It's good. The enthusiasm level is great. In all these recent elections, not just Alabama and Virginia, but a lot of these races around the country, we're seeing the energy level of the Democrats and higher turnout than Republicans. Why a wave won't happen? Well, first of all, 10 months is a long way to go. You have to look at polls at the local level, not the national level. Remember, the polls showed Hillary Clinton was going to win the popular vote, and she did. But that didn't count the fact that she won the electoral votes. So be careful with polls as we get closer to individual races. Right now, I'd say there's probably a 60% chance that the Democrats will pick up the House and or the Senate. And what will happen next year, assuming that happens, is going to be investigate, investigate, investigate. I was there in '95 when Republicans took over and Bill Clinton was president, and Republicans investigated, investigated, investigated. When Democrats took over and Bush was president in 2007, investigate, investigate, investigate. And it happened after Obama after 2 years. Investigate, investigate. It's going to make Donald Trump very uncomfortable the last 2 years if the Democrats take control of one of the houses, which very likely is going to happen. So, and then the focus next year will start turning on who's going to run in 2020 against Donald Trump. It's depressing up there right now. And I don't see the changes, anything happening immediately right now to improve it. It's just going to be a gridlock situation. We're going to be mad as hell out of it. But we're all responsible for sending a lot of the people there. And that's the challenge we have in this country. So with that, let me take some questions. Is that encouraging talk? Okay, I'll repeat the question. Is there a question? Got to be somebody. Oh, yes.
Who do you see as the 2020 candidates, the most likely candidates for the Democrats?
Well, it's interesting. There are 5 Democratic senators who are talking about running right now. And the challenge is they're quite liberal. And so are they electable nationwide? Can Cory Booker or this new senator from California, Harris, I think her name is, there's, a lot of them are talking about it, but the problem is the most successful candidates are usually governors. And one of the challenges the Democratic Party has is they don't have a farm team for generating a lot of good candidates. There are 31 Republican governors right now. There's a lot more governors coming out of the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. And so the challenge is they don't have a good farm team. And that's true not just for president, but for Senate and House races. In Florida, that's a challenge they have for the governor's race, is they don't have a lot of farm team because the Democrats so overwhelmingly control the state. So they have some names out there, and you never can tell when a Donald Trump type person could pop up with billions. One thing, a couple things I mention is when you talk about campaign finance, it is so frustrating. It's a First Amendment issue, as you know, that spending money in an election is a free speech issue. And Rick Scott spent $70 million to get elected governor. Vern Buchanan spent $7 million to become our congressman. There's a constitutional right, nothing you can do about it. So we don't know who's going to turn up, but a lot of these senators are talking about it, but senators are rarely elected president. The only ones have been Obama and Kennedy. Alex.
What do you think of the chances of Oprah becoming the nominee?
Slim to none. You gotta. I was always amazed. I never thought that Donald Trump would stick with it. I didn't think he had the stomach to stay with it. It's tough campaign. Will, is it tough campaigning? Harder than you realize. It was very tough. But when I ran in '92, I didn't realize how tough it was. I was naive. I never run for elected office before. It was hard. But I was lucky. Once I won the Republican nomination in ณี2, I never had a tough election after that. This district was so Republican, I didn't have to work that hard in the night against a very well qualified Democrat who ran against me in '92. '94, I didn't even have a Democrat run against me. In '98, no Democrat ran against me. So, in these partisan districts, once you're elected, you're kind of safe in there if you want to be. But I don't think she has a fire in the belly. I never thought Donald Trump did, but he did. Any other questions? Yes.
I enjoyed what you said about explaining the controversies, diversity that we have. But how much of the problem with Congress, particularly congressmen, is due to the fact that we're electing them every 2 years, so all they're doing is spending their time, getting elected, even immediately after they've gotten elected. And so they're catering to special interests because they need to raise money?
It's a good. Did you ever hear the question about why the focus is only every 2 years? The thing is, out of 435 members, over 350, 360 members don't have to worry about the election. I was there. I didn't have to worry about my re-election. I was fairly safely elected, and we stay there. So the challenge are the Clay Shaws and the more moderate members in Congress that are in these swing districts. And again, there's maybe 60 of them. So the majority of members don't have to deal with that. The Senate, similar. A lot of states are strong Republican states. I mean, there's no way a Democrat's going to get elected in Utah against Orrin Hatch's retiring. I mean, it's going to be that way. So there'll be a tough Republican primary, but it's going to be a Republican Senate seat. California, there's no way a Republican could win that state, and no way a Republican could win New York State. So for the majority of members in the House and the Senate, they don't really have tough elections. And so we think we're all there raising lots of money and everything, but that's not necessarily the case. You need to raise money to keep a campaign account going, and you need to be prepared. But it's not as much of a focus as people make it out to be, in my opinion. Cliff.
When you're not around, who and where are the best sources for getting accurate information on what is really going on in our politics in Washington? Where should we look?
Because obviously now on the internet, there's great sources of information. You start with Real Clear Politics, which is a non-biased source, and it's just a collection of all the news articles of the day. The Washington Post, I still subscribe to the Washington Post online. There's several Capitol Hill things I look at: The Hill, Politico, and Roll Call. And there's some other sites. The only one's fair and balanced, as you well know, Cliff, is Fox News. I gave a talk last week in Sarasota. If I had a PowerPoint, it was an interesting chart, and it had all these. 30, 40 years ago, you had Walter Cronkite, Chet Huntley and Brinkley, and now you have all these sources of news, which is good, but there is a chart that shows the most liberal, the most conservative, and the quality of the news. It's just so much of it's online. This Breitbart is not high quality and quite right wing, but it's an internet source. And so the Democrats have the same thing. I mean, so there's too much news, and but there's some good quality ones from the New York Times, which is expensive to get a subscription to, but I might read the Wall Street Journal too. So, yes?
You say chaos is occurring up in Washington. What do you think about term limits as being a solution to that?
Term limits are not a problem. In the House, one thing Republicans did, and the Democrats should do the same thing. When we took over in '95, we passed a rule that you only could be a committee chairman for 6 years and to move on. And so what it's done is kind of forced, on the Republican side, quick turnover. And if you're chairman of the Ways and Means, why would you stay around after being chairman for 6 years? You can't stay any further. So Republicans have had a high turnover, and you don't really see that a problem anymore in the House side. The Senate is a different issue. Seniority still controls the Senate, and as long as they keep seniority, people are running for re-election. I was glad to see Orrin Hatch, who is 80-some years old, not running for re-election. Dianne Feinstein's going to have a tough election in the Democratic primary. I know she's close to 80 years old. I mean, why? So they have a problem there, but I don't think term limits are never going to happen because you're never going to get a constitutional amendment. So it can't be done at the state level. It's a federal constitutional issue. So, but the Republicans solved the problem by putting term limits on committee chairmen, which is good or bad. I think, and Tom might even have an opinion about there or will, that in Tallahassee, we have 8-year term limits. And I think it's caused some problems. It's great that Bill Galvano is now going to become president of the Senate, doesn't have to wait around 20 years for that. But, you only have 8 years, and, you have to move pretty fast to get anything done, and I think there's a lot of problems with term limits. So I was in favor of term limits. I imposed them on myself, but I'm not anymore. Any other questions?
I had one.
Gilbert. Judge.
So when you were elected, you went up and you were a successful business guy. And you got to Congress and you had some great ideas, I remember. So tell me about where those great ideas went to. I knew you were a little frustrated.
Yeah, I was naive when I ran. I was naive when I got up there. And I have a PhD, and I taught statistics. I did successful in business here in the community. And I was kind of nervous going up there and meeting all these new people. And then I looked around the room, and I said, how in the world did they get elected? I mean, one of my classmates, it's really sad, Corrine Brown got elected with me, and she just showed up at federal prison on Monday. 71 years old and going to spend 5 years in prison. It was very frustrating to get anything done. I'll give you one interesting issue I took on. I fought the sugar program, and so it was an interesting experience. I was opposed to agriculture subsidies, and so I chose one that surprised that I would take on sugar. My lead co-sponsor was Chuck Schumer, so it was a Miller-Schumer bill. And Schumer and a lot of Democrats agreed with me. The liberal Democrats agreed with me, and the conservative Republicans agreed with me. So it was a great bipartisan effort. We lost that by 5 votes. And it was 5 members, 2 Democrats and 3 Republicans, who were co-sponsors of the bill and voted against it. And I mean, one of my friends told me, he said, Dan, I'm just a whore on this issue. It was a quick, easy $10,000 campaign contributions. And when I retired, Dan said, oh, I'm so sorry you're leaving, Dan. You're one of our best sources of fundraising there was. It's frustrating when that happens. And it's not a Republican or a Democrat thing. It's just so maddening. And it doesn't affect anybody's re-election voting against sugar or for sugar, unless you have sugar in your district. But that was one of the most frustrating things, is to see every reason why the conservatives and liberals will vote for me. It's an environmental issue. It makes no government sense. It raises the cost of food. All kinds of reasons. I have Dianne Feinstein was a supporter of mine doing a press conference with her. And Chuck Schumer, a liberal Democrat. We worked closely together. Barney Frank was one of my big supporters. Barney Frank he would tell the story, he represented Massachusetts, and how the sugar program affected the cranberry business. And the Canadian sugar is less than half the price of U.S. sugar, so the Canadian cranberry people had an advantage over the Massachusetts cranberry people. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Congressman, for speaking today. We really enjoyed that. That's a real pleasure. We hope you come back sooner rather than later and be with us again. Thank you very, very much. Some other thank yous. For those of you who don't know, Alex St. Paul is our program chair and soon-to-be president. She's our president-elect. And she, largely in concert with Judge Gilbert Smith, helped to line up the excellent speakers that we have. So we really appreciate the hard work that they do in creating such wonderful programs. Charles Clapsaddle and METV are responsible for filming and publishing our programs, and that's a fantastic benefit, and we appreciate him as well. Thank you, Charles. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 28. Our next guest speaker will be Sarasota historian Jeff LaHerde, who will speak about our first Manatee County Bar Association president. His name was John Hamilton Gillespie. The name of the program is The Scot Who Saved Sarasota. This gentleman was really a fascinating individual, and our speaker, Mr. LaHerde, will be talking about John Gillespie. There will be several judges from the 2nd District Court of Appeal also in attendance, so that'll be a wonderful program. One last thing, those of you who have not met our executive director over there, Grace Ann Frederico, I hope that you do. It's been over a year now. She's doing a fantastic job for us as executive director. We love her and appreciate her. She's not going to like this, but this is a big week for her. She celebrated a big birthday. And so, like it or not, here we go. Don't let me sing alone. You'll regret it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dan. Happy birthday to you. Meeting adjourned. Everyone have a safe trip.